Thanks for watching with us today. We're going to respect your time, and however much attention you think you have, we'll jump right into things. We'll do it by saying this. Jesus said some words to a group of people that were really consumed with monitoring each other's behavior. They had a lot of rules. If you do that, you're okay. If you don't do that, that's bad. If you do that, we'll put up with it. If you don't do that, you're out. They monitored that a lot, and it's easy to monitor. You can measure behavior. If you say that, it's okay. If you say that, it's wrong. If you say that on this day, it's okay, but if you say it on that day, it's wrong. They had a lot of those things they kept confronting Jesus with, and he had a huge message for them, and it's one we all need to understand. As a matter of fact, in Matthew chapter 15, he digs in with this. He says, "But the words you speak come from the heart." He starts out by saying, the things you say, it's not the things you say that I'm as concerned about, but we have to understand it's not just the words you say, it's from whence they come. It is the source of the words you say. And sometimes in public you got all the right words, but somewhere else there's something else. And I just want you to know, I'm not as concerned with you keeping into this little box your behavior modification as I am what's going on in your heart, because that's what defiles you. What's inside is what corrupts you. It's not like, hey, it would be like the thought that says, I'm going to clean up the bottom of my sink because it's really nasty and I'm going to hope for cleaner water to come out. That's just dumb. But it's what religion was teaching. Clean up the bottom of the sink and hope for pure water. He was saying, let's go to the source. Here's the source of the pure water. That's what will corrupt you. That's what will lessen you. That's what will beat you up. And he begins to dig in with some more things. He said, for from the heart come evil thoughts. He turns up the temperature a lot. Murder, adultery, all sexual immorality, theft, lying, and slander. He immediately starts saying there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. His point is, if you're not careful, things on the inside will eventually affect you to the point where there's a lot of things going on that you thought would never be a part of your life. How do people end up in such a bad place? And the answer is, little by little things happen. Matter of fact, if you could sum up this, he would say this: the inside stuff, your heart, that's your emotion. Your heart's just who you are. It's easy to monitor the stuff on the outside. As if I was having heart issues, I'll say it this way. I got up today, my heart's been beating all day. I have no idea how many times. What a slop. I have no idea. Has it been thousands or tens of thousands? I don't pay any attention to it. You know why? Because it's working. When I get in my car and everything's working, I don't monitor everything too much. But with my heart, I can't tell you how many beats per minute every step of the way. But I know this: if it started hurting, I would immediately go somewhere. When I did, they'd hook me up to something. And the first thing they do is monitor my heart. The heart's harder to monitor because it's not as obvious as the actions. He's trying to say to them, the inside stuff, if left unmonitored, if I don't keep a check on that, there's an outcome. It will eventually make its way out and it'll hurt me. If I'm not careful, things will build up on the inside of me. And when it does, if I don't take care of it, it'll eventually hurt me. It'll take away the best life I was intended to have. It'll take away the joy of my life. It'll make life a drudgery instead of a joy, a pleasure. It'll make life endurance more than it will something you look forward to. And some of us are like, well, that is my life. Well, I just want to say, I don't have answers for everything in your life. I just know this: when the inside, the emotional piece of us is unmonitored and unkept, eventually it will hurt us, and even worse, it'll hurt the people we love. It spews out on other people. We're in a series, week 2. It's actually from a carryover from a 9-week series we did last summer called, right now it's called Tending the Weeds in My Garden. And it comes from the lyric to a song, and the lyric to the song kind of said, I present all these pretty finished things like roses or flowers, when all of the truth of the matter is, behind all of that, there's a lot of weeds growing in my garden. I try to come off when I'm at church. I try to come off when I'm around people. I try to come off as respectable, as finished, as good as I can come off. But the truth is, sometimes underneath the surface, if I'm being honest, well, I'm not being very honest. If I could tell you the truth, there's a lot of stuff going on inside of me that's not great, but I try to fake it till I make it so everybody will think I'm okay. But the truth is, most of us have some areas in our life where we're just not that okay. And around here we say it's okay to not be okay, because that's a reality. If you just feel judgment, everybody stops. It's okay to not be okay, but we don't stop at that. There's a comma after that, but it's not okay to stay that way. His point will be, if we don't monitor the stuff on the inside, it's going to affect us. The purpose of this series last week, Jeremy started with the subject of anxiety. Now, some of you go, well, that's something good for me. Go back and watch it if you didn't see it. Go to ourjourney.news. And when you get there, you'll see videos that are available. You can go to our YouTube channel and do the same thing. Go back and watch that. A lot of people say, man, I deal, in our internal polling, over 70% of people said they deal with anxiety on a very regular basis. For some people, they say, I don't use that word. I'm a man. I'm not anxious. I'm not worried. We just use other words. We go, yeah, I'm dealing with a lot of stress. And I know there can be some nuance between a word like stress and a word like anxiety or a word like worry, but in the end, it all comes really close to the same roots. We all deal with that stuff. When it feels like the weight of the expectations of our world, my expectations for me, God's expectations, it feels overwhelming sometimes. He did a great job walking us through it. Today, I want to talk to you about the second piece of our how to deal with the internal part of us. I want to talk to you about the subject of anger. This is a tough one in some ways. If I were to ask everybody watching with me today, do you know anybody who's an angry person, or do you know of someone? It just seems like they're angry people. If I ask, just about everyone, if not everyone, would say, yeah, I can think of somebody. And it doesn't take long, and usually there's an image that comes into your mind. The crazy thing, if I were to ask all of you, or a room full of people like right here in front of me with all our chairs full, I could say, how many of you would consider yourself a person that really struggles in dealing with anger? Would you consider yourself a really angry person? There would be some people who would say, yeah, I have to be honest about that. But most of us wouldn't consider ourselves as someone who really has to deal with anger. And I just want to say, I don't believe that's true. We all have different levels of that. But this is one of those things that, if left unmonitored, affects us, and it affects the people we love. And it's unfortunate, and it's painful, and it's ugly, but it is a reality. Before I go any further, I want to do a couple of things, because I know on this subject it's a little bit touchy, and I'm going to get some pushback. Sometimes when I'm listening to somebody speak, I'll kind of argue back and forth in my head with them. I'm always right, and they're always not as right as they think they are, and you may be doing that with me. So if you are, I'm perfectly fine. No judgment on that. But let's argue back and forth for a minute. For some people that say, I don't really deal with anger, for me, I'm not angry, I'm just frustrated. I don't get angry over it. Sometimes the situations around me or the people around me or whatever it is, I just get really frustrated with it. Okay, if that makes you feel better. I'm sure there's a distinction with very little difference when it comes to anger and frustration, but once again, I think it comes back on the inside of us. It comes down to a very similar root. I'm not angry, I'm just frustrated. Call it what you want. I'm not trying to beat anybody up today. I'm not trying to beat me up when I deal with this. I'm just trying to say we need to find it, figure it out, find what triggers it and what do I do with it? How do I cope with that? How do I not let it wind its way around the good things in my life and snuff the life out of me? So the first one is I'm not angry, I'm frustrated. Second one is this, whether you shout it out, and there's anger, that's most people's view of anger. You see somebody who's like a volcano that's starting to erupt. You see somebody, when I was growing up, my mom used a pressure cooker. You guys know what that is, right? A pressure cooker, and it built up all this pressure, and then there's a little rocker on top, and it would start going. If you took that thing off, you'd see the steam go, or if you opened it before you released the pressure, you can make a mess out of your face or your ceiling. A lot of people picture anger like that, is this explosion. We would call it on this, whether you shout it out, that is anger, by the way, or whether you shove it down, because the external side, the extrovert, shouts out anger. They get bigger. You know why? Because that comes natural to them. You know, the other reason is because sometimes it gets you what you want. There's some people who don't love the way they feel when they get angry, and they say or they do, but sometimes they do love the outcome, at least in that moment, because they get what they want, because people are like, just go get out of his way. Whether you shout it out or you shove it down, for some of us, we have an introverted form of anger, and we just get angry. We stew over it. We cross our arms. We clench our teeth. We pull away. And by the way, just as controlling, some of you grew up in a home where anger was loud and explosive. Man, I'm sorry. Some of us grew up in homes where it was shoved down, and there were people who were just as controlling. They were just as manipulative. They got their way by doing it differently, and if that's you, I'm so sorry. Man, that's a horrible way to grow up. And then for some of us, we live that as well. And I just want to say, anger doesn't have one image or the other, it's both. It's both. And let me give you one more then. Anger injures, whether it comes from loud or whether it comes from deep inside and not very visible. Either way, it injures. Either way, it is ugly. Either way, it hurts. Either way, it is a problem. Let me give you one last one to look at. For those of you who've been around church, you might say this one, wait a minute, Chris. Maybe sometimes we're supposed to be angry. I think the Bible even mentions that. It's called righteous indignation. There's your great term. Or maybe you can quote part of a verse. The Bible even says, be angry and sin not. That means it's okay to be angry but not to sin. You can be angry without sin. And so, wait a minute, maybe I don't have an issue with anger. I am just being righteously indignant. And if that's you and that's your argument and how you justify your anger, you may be right. There is righteous indignation. There is anger. There are things we should be angry about. I just thought I would throw this up here real quick, not throw it up, but put it up on this screen quickly for us. When anger is righteous, so you can have a little litmus test. When anger is righteous, it's not about defending you. That's one of the ways you know. That knocks about 99% of all of our anger out of the way, because usually anger is centered around me. It's not about defending you, it's about standing up for what's right. But I will say, this first one, I can justify almost everything I do by this what's right, because I wouldn't be angry if I weren't right. And by the way, the reason I think what I think is because I think it's right. You do too. That's where all of us live. Let's don't get lost in the first one. Let's keep going. It earns respect. My righteous anger earns respect for those who are watching, how you respond to it. For those who are on the edges, for those who are in the hallways, those who are in the room with you, those who are experiencing what they're watching, it earns their respect. When you get through, they lean toward you, not away from you. It makes their respect for you grow. Let me give you this third one. Most importantly, it points people toward God, not away from God. Or in other words, it's constructive. There were times in slavery that there was some righteous indignation. There's times in women's suffrage. There's times in child labor laws and civil rights. There's times when, of course, somebody needs to stand up and there's a righteous indignation. But when you do, it leads toward not my betterment, but others, and it points people toward God. It becomes constructive. So sure, there are those times. We'll call those the 1%, and then the rest of the time we're together, we'll deal with the 99%. In the Bible, there's a guy by the name of James who was the half-brother of Jesus. And can you imagine growing up with Jesus as your brother, what that must be like? Never did anything wrong, and then there's you. He always said things, and people were like, ooh, and then there was you. That was James. We don't read a lot about James earlier in Scripture as he grew up, even as Jesus was more active. But after the crucifixion, they killed Jesus. He saw that. They stuck him in a tomb. He saw that. 3 days later, he raised himself from the dead, and he saw that. After that, evidently that's pretty convincing, because even his brother then called him not just my brother, he called him Lord, the boss. Can you imagine what it takes for a brother to reach a point with another brother to call him Lord? And he did. As a matter of fact, he was eventually martyred because he wouldn't quit saying that. James wrote a letter, so a bunch of people are going to read this, have read this, and are still reading it in James chapter 3. And he says some things that if we could get our arms around them, or if we could fully understand them, I think it would change so much in our world. It would change so much in our lives, and it would certainly change everything in our relationships. I just want to show it to you. Some of it is super interesting. He starts out with a question, who is wise and understanding among you? He starts off with this question like are you wise? Do you think you have great understanding? And the reason he does is because everything he talks about requires this. By the way, people who are filled with anger have very little of this. That anger, one of the things that snuffs out in our life is wisdom and understanding. He starts with a question, and then he starts digging in and turns up the temperature just like Jesus did. He said, then if you are wise and understand him, then show it by your good life, by the deeds done in humility that comes from wisdom. And he begins to put two things together that aren't always put together. He puts humility and wisdom. He ties them together. And he's just saying, listen, you don't find people who have wisdom that don't have humility. And you don't find people who have humility that don't grow in their wisdom. He said, listen, there's no such thing as a person of great wisdom and a person who's full of pride at the same time. People who often consider themselves the most wise, the wisest, those people are often filled with pride. Some of us who have worked hard on that and have prayed for that and have dug into that, it is so easy to start seeing yourself as more than we are. And the reason he talks about that, this wisdom things, wisdom is the ability to see life as it really is. It's to have perspective. There's a great wisdom word, is perspective. People who have wisdom recognize their very small amount of control, and people who are prideful think they control a lot. If this is going well, it's because I've done this, this, and this. They won't say it sometimes, but it's there. Sometimes they'll say it a lot. The reason we're winning is because of me, because of what I've done. It's crazy with wisdom how much we recognize that we don't control as much as we think we do. When I was a teenager, my dad had a heart attack, and in one day, he went from this super controlling guy, he was laying flat on his back, and for 30 days didn't get out of a hospital room. They couldn't make him stop having heart attacks. I remember talking to him as a teenager in the middle of that, and him saying, this is so hard. I never realized how little control I have, because one minute I've got my whole day, week, month, and year plan, and the next minute I'm laying here, and I don't know if I'm going to be alive or dead or I'm ever going to do anything. And he said these words, I feel like I've really lost control. Well, as a teenager, that made perfect sense to me. The longer I live, the less sense that made. It insinuates he ever had control. And a lot of us believe we do. I'm going to work hard enough. I'm going to try hard enough. I'm going to be smart enough. I'm going to be slick enough. I can talk my way into. And here's the truth of it. In one day, all of that can go away. It's not yours to control. That because God's allowed it into your life doesn't mean it's as a result of you. I had a friend a few years back who owned a business, and they took computer chips out of some things that were no longer needed, but they figured out that those chips could be cleaned, reformatted, and put into other things and sold for a lot of money. And as they did that, he made millions, millions of dollars. He had tons of money. He lived big. He played big. He did big life things. Good dude. And for him, he felt like, I have found it. I've worked hard and I figured this out. And then one day the market changed and you could get chips from somewhere else that would do that. And his little market wasn't needed. And in just a matter of weeks and a few months, wham, he was totally bankrupt. I remember talking to him and him saying, I felt like in one day I lost control of everything. In one day, the truth is, he realized he never had control of very many things. And I think he recognized that as well. It's what our friend James would be talking about. With wisdom comes humility, because with wisdom you recognize how few things you control and that you're not everything you think you are. He goes on then and he says, but if you harbor, who's wise? Who's understanding among you? Well, if you're wise, you'll have humility. And if it's you, your outcomes will be good. But if not, if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition, those are interesting words to put together, in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Ambition is one of those things that we claim as a virtue, as a value. We want people to be ambitious. Ambitious is a God-given thing. It ought to be something we value. When you put this word in front of it, it's also the very thing that will destroy you and the things around you. When your ambition and your drive become self-centered, and the truth is, it is almost impossible to have ambition without some selfish in there. It has to be monitored all the time, because if not, it will eat you up from the inside. And it's hard to know where motives are. Are my motives to help people or to help people so it'll help me? Well, the truth of the matter is, if you don't monitor it all the time, the help me will override the help people, and it becomes selfish ambition. It's such a difficult thing. And as he begins to build his case, he says, for where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you'll find disorder and every evil practice. His bottom line is, what's inside of you will eventually come out. What's inside of you is going to find its way, and when it does, it won't be pretty. He says all of these words, getting ready to make his point. Are you ready for his point? If you're at a Bible, you would turn the page or you'd look to the next chapter. If you're on your little electronic version, you can push the arrow to go to chapter 4. And in chapter 4, he starts with another question. He says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? What causes fights and quarrels among you? Now, for some of you, you would say, he worded that wrong. That's the wrong question. It shouldn't be what causes fights and quarrels. It should be who. Who causes fights and quarrels? And then you'd have an answer. It's my mom. I'm a full-grown person. And my mom, she's still all up in my business, telling me what to do and how to just get off my back. And we fight all the time because of it. It's not what causes it, it's who causes it. It's not what causes it. It is the lady I work with, the guy I work with, and he's such a jerk, and he doesn't do what he's expected to do. And as a result, it's the people I work for. It's the people I've hired, and we try so hard, and then they don't show up, and they don't. And it's not what causes fights and quarrels. It's who causes it. It's my husband. It's my wife. And for most of us, if you ask this question, the first answer would be a who, not a what. But James didn't mess up when he said it. He said, what causes it? And then he begins to dig in. He said, don't they come? Don't what? Fights and quarrels. Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? To which most of us would say, no. No, if you understood the situation I'm in, if I told 50 people my situation, 50 out of 50 would go, I understand. Boy, that's tough. If I could explain, I'm not denying that. I'm not saying there aren't really tough situations. His point is, before you think about the origin of fights and quarrels being from outside, he said they come from within you. I don't think that's what anybody wanted to hear, but we live in a day where there is so much of this going on in our society, in families, in churches, in schools, in PTAs and administrations, in every workplace in our world, politically, in every way. Socially, we're in such a fights and quarrels world. It doesn't take anything to start with, and the truth is, they come from, here's the one you don't like, they come from your desires. that battle within you. They come from my desires that battle within me. And that's not what I want to hear, but he's trying to help us. So he lands us with this: you desire, but you do not have. He's telling us where the root of all of this is. You desire, but you don't have. And then he states it so aggressively, so you kill. You desire and you don't get what you want, so you kill. To which I go, I don't think so. I mean, it's been weeks, months since I killed anyone. That seems so overstated, and his point is this: when you allow those desires, I don't get what I want, and it festers inside of me, and it wraps around the good things in my life, eventually you find yourself doing things you never thought you would do, saying things. It's for every conversation you've had that you got a little over the edge, you said things, and then you felt so stupid or so regretful. And you say to yourself, I'm never going to say that stuff to my kids again. I'm never going to say that stuff. I'm so sorry. I don't know where that came from. It's just been such a tough day. It has been such a tough situation. It's been such a tough season. And what James would say, not to punch you in the face, but to hopefully open your mind to this, is the reason it came out of you is because it was inside of you. And it's been left unmonitored there. And if I don't deal with those emotions, that eventually they'll grow to something I would never think I'm capable of. You covet, but you can't get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. He lands his plane by saying, listen, you want, but you don't get, and over the course of time, when you leave that cycle, I want, I don't get, I feel frustration. There's a better word than anger. I want, I don't get, I want anger. People don't agree. I get all of that. Plus I've got all of this pressure from outside, and eventually, like shaking up your bottle of Coca-Cola or Dr. Pepper, and then taking the top off and watching it spew. You know what comes out? What was inside. You know what helped it come out was all the stuff around us. And I just want to say this before we go too far. I know there's some of you that are in situations that are just completely not fair. I get it. I'm not trying to belittle that. I know there's some of you who've been deeply hurt by things that were so wrongly done to you. I totally get that. His point isn't to say, get over it, suck it up, buttercup. His point is to say, I can't help you fix what happened and from the outside, the things that are occurring, but I can help you with you, because as a result of that, it will either break you because you won't monitor that, and that anger will grow and you won't even know it's growing, and you don't know how you're having, what your heart is doing till you have a heart attack, and by then it may be too late because the damage is done. And I'm just saying to you, hey, take a breath and learn to look what's going on inside. I want to help you with that. That's why we quarrel and we fight. He would say it, if he had to sum it up this way, the source is out there. The source isn't out there, the source is in here. He would say, it is so easy to say the reason I am the way I am is because of that, and that. The problem is that won't help you at all. The only source that you can change, the source of you, is you. So why not dig in there? Why don't we fight for that? He might say it this way: we aren't getting what we want, and that is the source. When I want what I want and don't get what I want, I end up frustrated. My frustration escalates to anger, and anger escalates to something that if I leave it unmonitored will hurt me and hurt the people around me. And then I'll throw one more on here. We need to own our own slice of the pie, and this is really where he's trying to land all along. He's trying to say, what would it do for humanity? What would it do for your home? What would it do in your relationships, at work, at home, with your extended family, if you and everybody else said, listen, I'm not saying there's not issues with you. There is. If I'm in a relationship with you and we have this, you are part of the problem. I'm sure of that. If it's you and me, you can look at me and say, I'm sure it's not just me. Chris is part of that problem. You'll be right 100 out of 100 times. That I don't come into this with perfectly clean hands. But what he's trying to say is if we will first own our slice of the pie, it will unwrap all of the garbage around us that anger does, and it will free us up, and we'll be able to deal with the life we've been given. We'll be able to find joy, not because there's no struggle. We'll be able to find joy in the middle of struggle. We'll be able to find peace even though there's still chaos. But when anger wraps its tentacles around us, it affects everything. It colors everything that happens in our life. And so I've got two things I want to give you, and then we'll wrap things up. Here's the first one. Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, I guess, Tuesday into Wednesday, about 3 in the morning, I wake up, and this is the thought that was on my mind. I have no life, so I do things like this. Like literally got up out of bed, grabbed my phone, typed it in. Before I go off, blow up, you know what I mean? Before I spew it all out with anger, before I go off or close off and push it down and act like it isn't, and then sulk around and stomp around and manipulate that way. Before I go off or close off, I need to figure out what's off. I need to look inside of me and say, where is it that I'm not getting what I want? And I need to deal with that, because in the end, I'm not getting what I want is always the answer. That is the root of anger. That is the root of quarrels and fights and disputes. I'm not getting what I want. So I think you may have oversimplified that. I'm not sure that that's anything simple about saying before I go off or close off, I want to figure out what's off. I'm not sure there's anything simple about that. I just know it works. A bunch of years ago, pastor, writer Andy Stanley made a statement. It's stuck in my head because it's some stuff that I've tried to work on for the last 25 years of my life. He put really good words to it. I want to give it to you. This is how we'll close, and this will either be really funny or weird or frustrating, one of those three. It's this statement. You know what part of the problem is, don't you? It's that I'm not getting what I want. And he made a suggestion for people who are in conflict of any kind. If it's you and your spouse, if it's you and somebody at work, if it's you and somebody in your neighborhood, whatever it is, that if you would just stop right in the middle before it gets worse, if you could just stop and say, hang on, I've got something to say. And if you would just say, you know what part of the problem is, don't you? To which they would go, what? And your answer would be, I'm not getting what I want. There's no next thing to say. If you're arguing with somebody and I'm arguing with somebody and I'm like, hey, listen, stop for a minute. You know what part of the problem is, don't you? I'm not getting what I want. To which they would go, well, I know. Okay. You talk about defusing a situation. Can you imagine a world where a husband and wife, we're brother to brother, we're friend to friend, we're coworker to coworker. If when things start heating up and you recognize there's anger going on, if you could just stop and figure out what's going on the inside and just say these words, hey, wait, just stop for a minute. You know what part of the problem is, don't you? I'm not getting what I want, and the other person would go, well, yeah, I guess the same's true of me. I'm not getting what I want. And if we could just stop for a minute and recognize what is it that I'm not getting that I want and deal with that on the inside of us, and then come back together to discuss what's left, the what's left is usually not very big. That'd be a game changer. Can you imagine? You go, well, I just don't know if that would ever work. I challenge you. I dare you. Beyond daring you, I double dog dare you. I dare you this week. It won't take you the rest of the day before something. If not, certainly a Monday is going to come soon, or a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday, and when they do, and when your anger's rising up, before you say something you wish you hadn't said, try to say this, hey, wait. You know what part of the problem is, don't you? And they're going to expect you to spew off something big. I'm not getting what I want right now. And watch it diffuse. Matter of fact, let's try it right now. You're watching. I don't care if you're by yourself or you're with somebody. If you've got your little earbuds in, you're sitting in a public place, say it softly. Let's just say it together. You know what part of the you're not saying it. Say it with me right now. You know what part of the problem is, don't you? I'm not getting what I want. Man, the value of understanding what's going on the inside. And by the way, this is what's going on the inside. It's as old as human beings are. It's as old as Adam and Eve. It's as old as your parents and your parents' parents, and it's handed all the way down to you and me. And the truth is, where anger gets its roots is when I don't get what I want, and it causes me to resent, and it causes it to fester, and it wraps it. It doesn't just become a thing. It wraps around all the good things in my life, and it steals away the nutrients. It steals away the goodness. Wouldn't it be great if we would monitor our heart before the attack, if we'd monitor our soul before we lose ground, before we give away our integrity, if we said fewer I'm sorry's and more, hey, wait a minute. You know what the problem is, don't you? Well, I'm not getting what I want. And when I recognize that I can deal with me, and when I deal with my slice of the pie, even if the pie doesn't go away, I now have room to allow God to be involved and do what God can only do and bring peace in the middle of difficulty. Don't underestimate what God can do when we can humble ourselves enough to say, hey, you know what part of the problem is, don't you? I'm just not getting what I want. So God, we would ask you to give us enough wisdom to see through the middle of the source is not out there. The only source I can deal with is inside of me. And would you help us do it this week? We ask it because you said we could in your name. Amen. Thanks for watching.